Many Americans have become concerned that if Trump takes office, it will violate the 14th Amendment. What will it mean the 14th Amendment is not invoked? What will happen if it is? Could it be used to nullify his presidency? But how would this be possible? Welcome back to our channel. I'm Haas.
I'm Cece.
Today we got a hot topic for you. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment gave Congress the authority to bar public officials who took an oath of allegiance to the U.S. Constitution from holding office if they engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution. The original intent was to prevent the president from allowing former leaders of the Confederacy to regain power within the U.S. government after securing a presidential pardon. It states that a 2/3 majority vote in Congress is required to allow public officials who had engaged in rebellion to regain the rights of American citizenship and hold government or military office. Congress invoked the section for the multiple would-be office holders after the Civil War, when it refused to sit certain members. And Congress passed the 1870 Enforcement Act to enforce the provision. In 1872, Congress passed the Amnesty Act, which removed the prohibition for most ex-Confederates. After a disappointing loss to President Joe Biden, former President Donald Trump and his outgoing administration came up with a 7-part plan to overturn the 2020 election results, according to the January 6th committee. The plan included the following. Step 1. Trump had knowledge that he lost the 2020 election, but spread misinformation to the American public and made false statements claiming significant voter fraud led to his defeat. Step 2. Trump planned to remove and replace the Attorney General and Justice Department officials in an effort to force the DOJ to support false allegations of election fraud. Step 3. Trump pressured Vice President Pence to refuse certified electoral votes in the official count on January 6, in violation of the U.S. Constitution. Step 4. Trump pressured state lawmakers and election officials to alter election results in his favor. Step 5. Trump's legal team and associates directed Republicans in 7 states to produce and send fake alternate electoral slates to Congress and the National Archives. Step 6. Trump summoned and assembled a destructive mob in Washington and sent them to march on the U.S. Capitol. In Step 7, Trump ignored multiple requests to speak out in real time against the mob violence, refused to instruct his supporters to disband, and failed to take any immediate actions to halt attacks on the Capitol. Now that Step 6 is the part of the plan that is being scrutinized under the 14th Amendment. That is his participation and influence over the events that took place on January 6, 2021. And on January 5th and January 6, 2021, thousands of Trump supporters gathered in Washington, D.C. to support his false claims that the 2020 election had been stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, and to demand that then Vice President Mike Pence and Congress reject Biden's victory. Starting at noon on January 6, at a Save America rally on the Ellipse, Trump gave a speech in which he repeated false claims of election irregularities and said, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And as Congress began the electoral vote count, thousands of attendees, some armed, walked to the Capitol, and hundreds breached police perimeters. Under encouragement from Trump, the mob attacked the United States Capitol building in Washington, D.C. In an attempted self-coup d'etat, they sought to keep Trump in power by preventing a joint session of Congress from counting the Electoral College votes to formalize the victory of President-elect Joe Biden. The attack was ultimately unsuccessful in preventing the certification of the election results. According to the bipartisan House Select Committee that investigated the incident within 36 hours, 6 people died. 1 was shot by the Capitol Police, another died of a drug overdose, 3 died of natural causes, and a police officer died of natural causes a day after being allegedly assaulted by rioters. Many people were injured, including 174 police officers. 4 officers who responded to the attack died by suicide within 7 months. Damage caused by attackers exceeded $2.7 million. Does this count as engaging in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution as stated under the 14th Amendment? The 14th Amendment prohibits any federal office holders who have engaged in insurrection from holding office again. And Democrats have long suggested Trump infringed on the law when he inflamed the violent mob that attacked the Capitol 4 years ago. At the time, House Democrats overwhelmingly voted to impeach Trump for incitement of insurrection. Their leader, Hakeem Jeffries, has routinely called Trump the insurrectionist in chief. But the real question lies in if impeaching Trump for the insurrection is enough to invoke Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. In Anderson versus Griswold, the Colorado Supreme Court held that Trump's actions before and during the attack constituted engagement in insurrection. Their assertion is that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment disqualifies presidential candidates who have engaged in insurrection against the United States. The Colorado Supreme Court's ruling in Anderson versus Griswold was the first time that a presidential candidate was disqualified from office in the state on the basis of the 14th Amendment. However, on January 5th, 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court granted Trump's petition for a writ of certiorari, seeking review of the Colorado Supreme Court ruling in Anderson versus Griswold on an accelerated pace. Oral arguments were held on February 8, 2024, and on March 4th, 2024, the Supreme Court issued a per curiam, which means a court opinion not authored by or attributed to a specific judge. The ruling reversed the Colorado Supreme Court decision. All 9 justices held that an individual state cannot determine eligibility under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment for federal office holders, and that such power is conferred exclusively to the federal government. A majority of the court also ruled the section to be non-justiciable, and that only Congress can enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. In effect, the courts, federal or otherwise, cannot declare a candidate ineligible for office under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment unless an act of Congress explicitly grants them that power. In other words, a law has to be passed. Can you imagine getting a law passed to convict a Republican presidential candidate who was also a past president, passed by a Republican majority House. It's a perfect storm. But this ruling was still a thorn in Trump's side. He effectively sidestepped it. What did he do? He submitted Section 3 excluded the president, as the presidency is not an office under the United States, according to his interpretation, and thus the president is not an officer of the United States. He submitted that he himself didn't engage in the insurrection and didn't tell his supporters to enter the Capitol. He said he merely called for peaceful and patriotic protest. He also submitted that his pledge as president is not to support the Constitution, but to preserve, protect, and defend it. Let's just be honest. Trump is a spin artist and will throw any and everything against the wall to get what he wants, whether it's the truth or it's a lie. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, he wasn't found guilty of promoting the insurrection, and thus hasn't been able to be held responsible for any of that under the 14th Amendment. And coupled with him gathering a Pandora's box of his associates' secrets to hold their feet to the fire when he needs to pull it out whenever he needs to, he makes himself basically untouchable. Because of this ruling, I think it's safe to say that any attempts by states or courts to nullify Trump's win under the 14th Amendment would have to come explicitly from Congress. We're just gonna have to see how all of this shapes up over the next couple of months. Be sure to tune in to Cece and Haas again next week, when Cece will be back and we will give you a deep dive into the 14th Amendment in its entirety. Until next time, be true to yourself, be patient with each other, keep your mind sharp, and be the change you want to see in the world. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.